Welcome to the world of science fiction stories, and don't forget to like, share and subscribe my channel. Enjoy the listening. They gave us trash, we built a warship of nightmares. The massive alien ship hung above the lunar surface like a dark cloud. Its sleek purple hull reflected no light, seeming to swallow the stars behind it. Captain Jack Reed watched from the observation deck of Luna Station as smaller craft detached from the main vessel, carrying what the Dominion called gifts to humanity. Jack knew better. They weren't gifts, they were trash. 3 years had passed since the Dominion arrived in Earth's orbit. Their ships had darkened the skies of every major city on the planet. Humanity fought back with everything they had, missiles, jets, tanks, but it was like throwing stones at a thunderstorm. The aliens didn't even bother to fight back properly, they simply waited until Earth's government surrendered. "Captain Reed," a voice called from behind him. "The Overseer requests your presence for the unloading ceremony." Jack turned to face the young man. The boy couldn't be older than 20, but his eyes looked ancient. Everyone's eyes looked that way now. "Tell them I'll be right there," Jack said, straightening his uniform, a mockery of his old Earth Defense Fleet outfit now adorned with Dominion symbols that marked him as a liaison. The landing bay was already busy when Jack arrived. Dominion guards stood at attention, their armor making them look more like insects than the vaguely reptilian creatures beneath. Their oversized eyes tracked Jack as he walked past. Overseer Kell waited at the main platform, standing nearly 7 feet tall with mottled green skin and 4 arms. Kell was considered small by Dominion standards. "Captain Reed," Kell said, his translator turning the series of clicks and whistles into flat English. "Prompt as always. A commendable quality in your species." Jack forced a smile. "We're grateful for your generosity, Overseer." The words tasted like ash in his mouth, but Jack had learned to play his part as liaison between what remained of human leadership and the Dominion. His job was to keep the aliens happy and his people alive. The bay doors opened and the first containers began to arrive. Dominion workers, members of various subjugated species, unloaded crates of machinery, electronics, and metal scraps. "This shipment comes from our recent fleet upgrade," Kell explained, gesturing with his lower arms while his upper limbs remained formally clasped. "The materials are, of course, obsolete by our standards but should prove quite advanced for humans." "We appreciate your consideration," Jack replied, watching as the workers opened one of the containers. Inside were what appeared to be engine parts, weapons components, and control panels, all damaged or incomplete. The Dominion's idea of charity was to give humans their garbage and expect gratitude. But as Jack moved closer to inspect the delivery, something caught his eye. Among the jumble of alien tech, he spotted what looked like a neurotransmitter, similar to designs he'd seen in Dominion ships during the brief tour they'd allowed during the peace negotiations. "Is something wrong, Captain?" Kell asked, noticing Jack's interest. Jack quickly looked away. "Not at all. Just admiring the craftsmanship. Your technology is impressive even when decommissioned." Kell made a sound that Jack had learned to recognize as pride. "Yes, well, even our discarded technology is centuries beyond your most advanced systems." The unloading continued for hours. Jack carefully noted every component that seemed unusual or potentially valuable, storing the information in his memory rather than risking a digital record that might be monitored. Later that night, after filing his official report, Jack sat alone in his small quarters on the lunar base. He pulled out a hand-drawn map from beneath his mattress and added new markings, recording the locations where today's most interesting trash had been sent for processing. A soft knock interrupted his work. Jack quickly hid the map and opened the door to find Lisa Arias, one of the few scientists allowed to study Dominion technology. "Did you see what they brought today?" she whispered, glancing nervously down the corridor before slipping into his room. "I did," Jack replied, closing the door. "Including some neural interface components they probably didn't mean to give us." Lisa's eyes widened. I knew it. I detected unusual energy signatures, but they rushed us through the inspection. They're getting careless. Jack said, they don't think we're smart enough to understand what we're looking at. He pulled out his map again and showed Lisa the pattern he'd been tracking over the last 6 months. They've accidentally included components that together could form the basis of something big. Today's delivery was the missing piece I've been waiting for. Lisa studied the map. Even if we had all these parts, we'd need someone who understands how they work together. I know someone, Jack said. Dr. Emma Wells. She was developing countermeasures before the invasion. The Dominion thinks she's just analyzing their scrap metal in Australia now. The woman who lost her family during the London descent? Lisa asked. Jack nodded grimly. The same. And she has more reason than most to want the Dominion gone. 3 days later, Jack's transport shuttle touched down at the Perth processing facility. The sprawling complex was built to sort and distribute the Dominion's gifts across Earth. Armed guards, humans working for the aliens, nodded at Jack's credentials. He found Emma in her lab, surrounded by disassembled alien tech. At 45, her once dark hair was now streaked with gray, and deep lines marked her face, but her eyes burned with the same intensity Jack remembered from before the invasion. Captain Reed, she said without looking up from her work. The Dominion's favorite pet comes to visit the colonies. Jack winced at the bitterness in her voice. We need to talk, Emma. Privately. She finally looked up, noticing his expression. Without a word, she led him to a small storage room and closed the door. What is it? Jack took a deep breath. They've made a mistake. A series of them, actually. He showed her pictures he'd secretly taken of the neural components. These aren't meant for us. But together with the other pieces they've gifted us over the past months. Emma's eyes widened as she understood. These could be adapted to human neural patterns with the right modifications. Could you do it? Jack asked. Build something they don't expect? Emma was quiet for a long moment. Then she looked at Jack with something he hadn't seen in years, hope. Not just something, Captain, she whispered. A nightmare. Their nightmare. Outside the storage room window, a Dominion ship passed overhead, its shadow briefly darkening the room. Neither of them spoke until the light returned. They think they're gods, Emma said, clutching the photos. But they've forgotten something important about humans. What's that? Jack asked. Emma's smile was cold. We've always been good at turning other people's trash into treasure. And we've always been good at war. 2 months after their meeting in Perth, Jack and Emma stood at the entrance of an abandoned coal mine deep in the Appalachian Mountains. Cold wind whistled through the trees as they watched a truck approach, its headlights off despite the growing darkness. Are you sure about this place? Emma asked, pulling her jacket tighter. Jack nodded. The mountain blocks Dominion scans, and they don't pay much attention to this region anyway. Too remote, too unimportant. The truck stopped, and 3 people climbed out. Jack recognized Lisa Arias immediately. The other 2 were strangers, a large man with massive hands and a thin woman with sharp eyes that missed nothing. Captain Reed, Dr. Wells, Lisa said, meet our new team members. This is Tom Miller, former chief mechanic for the Air Force. The big man stepped forward. His beard was wild, but his eyes were clear and focused. Captain, he said, shaking Jack's hand with a grip that could bend metal. And this is Marcus Brown, Lisa continued. She was security for Google before the invasion. Now she's our best chance at staying hidden. The thin woman nodded but didn't offer her hand. I set up jamming fields around the perimeter. As far as the Dominion is concerned, this place doesn't exist. Inside the mine, they had transformed the main chamber into a workshop. Lights powered by hidden generators hung from the ceiling. Tables covered with tools and equipment lined the walls. In the center of the room sat crates of alien technology, all smuggled from processing centers over the past months. "Welcome to the forge," Jack said, spreading his arms. "Not pretty, but it's ours." Emma moved immediately to the crates. "You got more than I expected." "People are taking risks," Jack replied. Once word spread about what we're doing, volunteers appeared. Tom whistled as he examined a piece of Dominion engine. "This is beautiful work. Horrible aliens, but damn, they know their engineering. Can you make it work with our systems?" Emma asked. Tom's laugh echoed in the cave. "Lady, I once built a working helicopter from 3 crashed planes and a tractor engine. This," he tapped the alien metal, "this is just a new puzzle." For the next several weeks, the team worked tirelessly. More people joined them, engineers, ex-military, even a few hackers who had managed to break into Dominion systems during the early days of the invasion. Emma focused on the neural interface components, every night falling asleep at her workbench, often waking with new ideas that drove their progress forward. "The problem isn't connecting to it," she explained one day as the core team gathered around her workstation. "It's that it was designed for Dominion biology. Their brains process information differently. Can we adapt it?" Lisa asked. Emma smiled and held up what looked like a metal helmet covered in wires and alien tech. "Already have. This is our prototype." "Who's testing it?" Marcus asked, eyeing the device warily. The room fell silent. They all knew the risks. The Dominion neural systems were powerful but dangerous. No one knew what would happen when connected to a human brain. "I will," Jack said finally. Emma shook her head. "Too risky. We need you for." "For what?" Jack interrupted. "If this doesn't work, there's no next step." "I'm doing it." No one argued further. That night, Jack sat in a chair in the center of the forge. Emma attached electrodes to his temples while Tom made final adjustments to the helmet. "The connection should be mild at first," Emma explained. "Just try to feel the system. Don't push it." Jack nodded, his mouth dry. "Let's do this." Emma lowered the helmet onto his head. For a moment, nothing happened. Then Jack gasped. His body went rigid, his eyes wide. "Jack!" Emma called, reaching for the helmet. "Wait," Jack whispered. I can see it." "See what?" Lisa asked. "Everything. The whole system. It's like it's alive." His voice was filled with wonder. For 10 minutes, Jack sat motionless except for his eyes, which darted back and forth as if reading an invisible text. Then Emma removed the helmet, and Jack collapsed forward, Tom barely catching him before he hit the floor. When Jack woke hours later, the entire team was gathered around his bed. "How do you feel?" Emma asked. Jack sat up slowly. "Like I understand them now. Not the aliens. The machines. I could feel how they work together, how they think." "Machines don't think," Marcus said. "These do," Jack replied. "Or they can, with the right pilot." Over the next month, progress accelerated. Tom and his engineers assembled components for what was beginning to look like a ship. It wasn't large, about the size of a commercial airplane, but its design was unlike anything human or Dominion. Its hull was a patchwork of different alien metals, pieced together like a puzzle. The engine core combined 3 different Dominion technologies that were never meant to work together, and at its heart was the neural interface, now expanded to connect with every system on the ship. "It's ugly," Tom said as they stood back to admire their work, "but it'll fly." "Will it fight?" Marcus asked. Emma pointed to what looked like ordinary pipes running along the hull. "These are weapon systems from 3 different Dominion destroyer classes. Individually, they're just trash. Together, they'll punch through anything the aliens have. What about detection? Lisa asked. The moment we power up, they'll find us. Emma smiled. That's the beautiful part. The hull absorbs scanner beams instead of reflecting them. The energy signatures appear as background radiation. As far as the Dominion is concerned, this ship doesn't exist until it's too late. Jack ran his hand along the ship's hull. The metal felt warm, almost alive under his touch. What do we call it? Tom asked. They all looked at the strange, menacing craft they had built from the Dominion's garbage. In the dim light of the forge, its asymmetrical shape cast shadows that seemed to move with a life of their own. Nightmare, Jack said. We call it the Nightmare. That night, as the others celebrated, Jack slipped away and entered the ship alone. He sat in the pilot's chair and placed his hands on the neural interface panels. He didn't activate the system, not fully, but even the passive connection sent images flooding through his mind, stars, open space, and Dominion ships burning. Soon, he whispered to the ship, and somehow, he knew it heard him. 6 months of secret work had transformed the pile of alien trash into something deadly. The Nightmare hung in the massive underground chamber, supported by makeshift scaffolding. Its black hull seemed to drink the light from the workshop lamps. Emma stood before a group of 20 engineers and pilots, pointing to a diagram of the ship. The final connections are complete, she announced. All systems are integrated with the neural interface. Tom Miller stepped forward, wiping grease from his massive hands. Engine tests show power levels 3 times higher than we expected. Whatever the Dominion used these parts for, they never pushed them to their limits. Jack watched from the back of the room. He hadn't slept well in weeks. Every night, dreams of the ship filled his mind, dreams of flying through space, hunting Dominion vessels. Sometimes he woke up certain he could feel the ship calling to him. What about weapons? Marcus asked. Lisa stepped up to the diagram. We've installed 5 different weapon systems. None of them were meant to work together, but we've modified the power distribution. Based on our calculations, they'll cut through Dominion shields like they're not even there. A tall woman raised her hand. Anna Jones had been a test pilot before the invasion. Now she was one of 6 pilots trained to fly the Nightmare. What about the neural load? She asked. The simulations showed dangerous levels of brain activity after 30 minutes of connection. The room went quiet. Everyone knew the risk. The neural interface allowed the pilot to control the ship with their mind, to feel the ship as an extension of their body, but the human brain wasn't built for such a connection. We're still working on that, Emma admitted. For now, we recommend keeping connections under 20 minutes. Jack stepped forward. That won't be enough in a real fight. The simulations show, Emma began. I don't care what the simulations show, Jack interrupted. I've connected with it. The ship needs more. It needs commitment. Emma's eyes narrowed. You've been connecting without authorization. That's dangerous, Jack. It's necessary, he replied. And I'll be the primary pilot when we launch. That's not, Emma started, but Jack cut her off again. It's decided. My mind is already linked to the ship. It knows me. The strange certainty in his voice silenced the room. No one, not even Emma, challenged him further. The next day, they prepared for the first full system test. Jack sat in the pilot's chair as Emma attached neural sensors to his temples and the back of his neck. This is a test only, she reminded him. Don't push for full integration. Just establish connection, run basic systems check, then disconnect. Understand? Jack nodded, but his eyes were already focused on something only he could see. Emma stepped back and gave the signal. Powering neural interface in 3, 2, 1. The connection hit Jack like a wave. In an instant, he wasn't just sitting in a chair. He was the nightmare. He could feel every part of the ship, the